Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Bafun, and this podcast is an extension of my book, also called Listen to Your Footsteps, which is a collection of essays, reflections, and poetry on things like fatherhood, identity and belonging, growing up, creativity, and the lessons learned. The purpose of this podcast is to gain insight and learn from the journeys that others have taken. I explore the worlds of art, culture, design, business, creativity, and life from the perspective of Africans who are contributing to the redefinition of the continent and who we are. So my guest today is a musician, a songwriter, a producer, a composer, Kunle Ayo. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you, man. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm super.
So the one nice thing about this podcast, I've been doing it for about 2 years.
Really? Nice.
Is I get to actually talk to people I haven't seen in a long time.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't seen each other probably since before lockdown.
Yes, just before lockdown, yeah.
So it's been a while.
Yeah, definitely.
How has it been navigating all of this as a musician?
It's been hectic. It's really been crazy. I think sometimes trying times brings out certain potentiality, as it were, that you never knew, it's there, I never liked business. I never liked counting money. I've never really enjoyed, making my 10 rand into 100 and 100 into 1,000 kind of thing. I've enjoyed art. I've enjoyed playing music, making music, and, money rolls in and you're cool. You know what I mean? But COVID has kind of, just before then, I realized that, okay, the atmosphere, as it were, for jazz is changing. When we lost Brahiu, when we lost Oliver Mutkuti, who are my mentors and my uncles, as it were, I called Hugh Masekela my father. He used to hold my hands and would say, Kunle, go and do that. And he would open doors for me. And so, since 2018, 2019, after we lost them, I realized that, okay, cool, things are changing. So how then do I balance things out? So, during COVID, just before COVID, we didn't know that COVID was going to hit. We started a restaurant business. My wife has always, sold food, but, via Uber Eats from home. And so that opportunity then came to say, okay, why don't we then expand the studio? Because I've always had a studio for the last, 12 years now, commercially. So we then say, okay, let's get a bigger space. Half of it will be a restaurant, half of it will be a studio. And we can then, I thought it was a good idea. It was at the time. It seemed as if, man, COVID hit and dynamics changed. And, we had to now relook at things. And even though we're still doing it, but it's really been an uphill battle. We've been really trying to balance things out. The soundscape has changed. What people listen to is different. The people that we knew in the business space and people who used to book us, some have retired, some have left. And so now there are new guys in the block and they have their own younger people that they work with. And so work started dwindling and, I'm like, okay, what do we do? So I started then just creating, music with different people, putting it out there and hoping that we were able to. But it's been a really big learning curve for me to see my potential to how to then approach the market. The days of CDs are done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all of those dynamics are just being thrown at you at the same time, we used to go to a show and if you're lucky, you could go home with 10,000 rand for just selling CDs, apart from the gig money and you know what I mean? So all of that has changed. And so it's really been like, okay, how do we then cope with this,
How has it been working? You talk about working with kind of different musicians.
Right.
I remember, I think the last time you and I kind of sat and interacted in a bit more depth was when you'd worked on the album with Brahiu.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to have him on my show in Kaya FM then.
Right.
Where we kind of got into the nitty-gritties of each song.
Right.
So what was that process like in terms of working with him to craft that album? And what are you having to say, learn anew, if there's anything, working with different artists or different spaces today?
Right. So working with a legend like the late Hugh Masekela, who already knew what he wanted, we didn't have to experiment with much. It was very clear, as it were. However, we will have moments where I'll say, Father, no, let's not do this. You've been doing this for the last 40, 50 years. Let's twist it a little bit. And in some cases, he would come and say, I don't want to do this song like this, because some of the songs that we did were songs he had recorded in the 70s. And so we had, what is that song called? That was a very fast song. It was a disco song. What's the title of that song? I can't remember. Anyway, but now we decided to slow it down. And one thing I liked about him was his willingness to infuse sounds. We did a lot of fusion of reggae. Well, other projects we did that on, but more for his album, it was more about taking Afrobeat, not Afrobeats, Afrobeat, fellas, Afrobeat, and infusing, and infusing some South African stuff into that. Because he's always been a huge fan and lover and, of course, friend of Fela. So he would always, ask me to, play an Afrobeat guitar line or Afrobeat drums before we brought the drummer in when we were still writing the music, and we did a lot of that. And that was really fun for me, because it then opened me up to ideas of, fusing, different genres and see what would then happen. Is the market ready for it? I don't know, but
because I remember one of the conversations I had with him. I can't remember the name of the song, but I was like, it had a very high life feel to it.
Right.
And because my father's Ghanaian, I grew up around high life.
Right.
So I didn't understand the intricacies of it, but you get that rhythm.
Yes.
And I remember asking him about it and him telling the story of going to Ghana with Fela.
Right.
And sitting at a hotel. And there was a band, because in those days, every hotel had a band playing.
True. Yeah.
And there was a band playing, and he said, Fela looked over to him and said, you can't do what we're doing, but there's your band. And that became his band.
Wow.
For a period.
Wow.
So just like you were saying, his way of looking and interpreting and reinterpreting.
Right. So Brahu would, like you said, he would do a high life song, but he wouldn't do it the high life way. So he would tell me to then play maybe an Afrobeat line, or he taught me tradition, how we should embrace and celebrate, who we are as a people.
Absolutely.
And don't over allow Western influences to take away who we are and what we have. And it's a difficult task. He was able to do it because he became an household name over the last, 40 years? He's been big since then.
And he spanned several decades, and several movements or generations.
Right. And it was part of all that movement. And so it was easy for him. It was an authority on that. But for a young and up and coming artist, or not so big artist, for you to come and then say, this is a fusion sound. Yeah. It might take a while. People might get used to it, but it's not going to be just like that. With Afrobeats, going back to what Nigerians are doing all over the world right now, the Burna Boys. People like Two-Face Idibia, they started that movement, and they crafted the way and started in a way introducing that sound to the world. And it felt like, where did this come from? It's been a journey. It's been there, but
it's the evolution.
Exactly. It kind of evolved over time. Same thing with what Brahu started. There was a project he did with his nephew, which I wish he was still around to help the boy promote it. That is a fantastic. It's a fusion of reggae, Afrobeat, and hip hop. That album, each time I listened to it in the studio, because he's released it now, but whilst we're trying to finish it up after you passed, it took him about 2 or 3 years, 4 years before he could release it, because he needed to clear it from the estate. And so it was a bit of a mission here and there, but when I listen to that sound again, and it's all thanks to Brahu for one, bringing the boy in and also telling him that I know you love rap, but you can't rap like an American.
Yes.
So give them something they don't have. And that is why I would always refer to Afrobeats. Afrobeat is acceptable right now because our boys don't budge. They don't try to sound like American. It's that pitching,
And then we're getting to the point where the Western music is starting to draw and sound like that.
They're beginning to come home and do music the African way now. So basically that is what Brahim taught me, and that is one of the things I would never forget, and I'm grateful to him for, to be able to see music differently. I'm at a place right now where I need to take one step back, balance these things out, and go at it again, and go at it in the sense that, fuse smooth jazz with Afrobeats and high life and those kind of sounds, and see how it would, I think it would work, but it might take a little bit of time and persistence and patience. You know what I mean? We just need to keep doing it, because I've not heard anybody do smooth jazz in that context. You know what I mean? So it's a thing that I have in my heart to do, and that is where I'm at right now.
Have you always wanted to do music?
Not really. I studied accounting. I thought I would, work as an accountant. I was even what we call ICANN in Nigeria, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN. I was at that place where I was looking at, writing those exams and being a chartered accountant. But when I picked music, when I picked guitar in 91, it was for the first time, 90/91 was when I, picked the guitar, and I just wanted to experiment. Let me just see what would happen. And at the time I was going to tertiary. I was doing accounting at the college that I studied, and I would play music. I mean, I would learn every weekend. I would go back to school Monday to Friday, and on the weekend I would come back, to Lagos. My school was Ogun State, which was about 2 hours away. So I would come back and learn from, my teachers at the time was teaching me guitar. But when I finished tertiary, and my knowledge of the instrument had grown, my love for it had grown, and I just thought, before I go and do this Institute of Chartered Accountants, whatever, let me try this music and see. And that was around 95, 96. I never looked back. Since then, I've been playing music, and, it just been interesting for me, and God has kind of been opening ways and doors for me. I met nice people who would then say, "Oh, come and play my band." And their band would then open me up to other opportunities, and that opportunity would open bigger opportunities. And then 2002, I found myself in South Africa.
What was the reaction at home? I mean, there's chartered accounting, a respectable profession for an African child.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, guitar.
All right. So, like I said, I always refer to how divinely, orchestrated my life has been since 92 when I started studying. My father was in America at the time, and I told him that I would like to play guitar. And he said, "No problem. Make sure you go to school." I mean, so I said, "Okay, cool." I enrolled, and then he bought me the guitar. So that was the guitar I would take to Lagos and go learn. Now, when I then finished and I wanted to experiment, I told them, "Give me a while. Let me just see." Now, immediately I started. One, I started making money. Two, doors started opening, and then an opportunity came for me to start traveling around the world, which chartered accountancy or whatever didn't give me.
Yeah.
So that gave them a bit of, okay, maybe there's something in it for this boy. Let's give him a chance. And that was it for me.
I read somewhere that you performed and toured with Lagbaja.
Yes.
What was that like? So, I mean, he's one of the few. How I find artists always, or musicians that resonate is always very strange for me.
Right.
Because I'll randomly come across a musician, or I'll come across a song or an album, and out of all of the, let's say, if there's 10 artists in that space,
yes,
there'll always be that one that somehow I connect with very differently.
Right.
And I don't even remember, it might have been at a Joy of Jazz or something.
Right.
I remember I had no idea who this person was.
Right.
But seeing him perform.
Right.
And since then, I've always had a soft spot for Baja. and then reading and doing my research, and it's you performed with him.
Yes, I did.
How did you end up in that? And what was that experience?
So from 96, I worked with an orphanage home. And that led me to working with different bands in Nigeria. So in between 98 and 99, I met another great artist at the time. He's not big globally, but he was big in Nigeria. His name is Kayode Olajide. Now, Kayode Olajide does what Lagbaja does, but differently in a little, quite different, but similar. So Kayode then opened me up to African music because I was more about the Judge Bensons and the Eclus and that Western music. So Kayode then, told me that if you really want to have global prominence and you need to then infuse who you are as an African. So I then started checking out. Now, before then, I had played with Chief Ebenezer Obey in 96 or so. I played with Chief Ebenezer Obey, who is also a big juju musician, and that speaks to our music. But the music was too limited for me because they didn't have changes, chord changes and jazzy stuff. So it was too, I could play it and I'm done. I want to do other things, So, but with Kayode, he opened up that thing for me. He was doing what Chief Ebenezer Obey would do, which is juju music, but the different way, Western influences and so Kayode then opened me up to like, oh, okay, cool. Now in 2000, so between 98 and 2000, I had gained a bit of name around Lagos. People started hearing about me. I played with this, and there were other smaller bands that I was playing with that were busy and, were all over the place.
Yeah.
So Lagbaja wanted to go he had an European tour, and I think his guitarist at the time didn't probably like the way he was playing or whatever the problem was. And he called me and said, hey, I'm going on this tour. I would like you to come with me. I've heard about you. And I mean, that was, what? Lagbaja calls you. He was one of the biggest artists in Nigeria at the time. So I thought, why not? And okay, also before I started working with him, he had a place called Motherland. Okay. Motherland was like, what would I refer to it? It was like a bass line, but like 10 times bigger.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was his residence place where every month, every last Friday, I think of the month, he would have his show and he would have, cutting razors. So I think I had played one or twice there. He wasn't there, but he would hear about me. And so I think from then he had connected and I thought, okay, what's the guitarist we could go, on this European tour with, I think they mentioned my name and he called me and I say, okay, yes, I would love to. So we did the tour. It was a 2-week tour. It wasn't even paying that much, it was probably $50 for that 2 weeks or something like that. I can't remember, but, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I did Spain, Germany, all these places. And when we got back, he said to me, why don't you join my band and play with me for a while? And I said, I don't mind, but I'm working on a project. That was my first album. I'm working on my first album. And when things come together, I would have to leave because, I mean, at that point, I needed to start my own stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd already started a band in Nigeria. I was doing small gigs for corporates. I would have a cousin in that company and they would, somehow call me, hey, get your band, and I would present my band and they would like it, you know what I mean? So I told him, I don't mind doing it, but this is the situation. He said, no problem. So between 2000 and 2002, we were working together in Nigeria and outside of Nigeria. We did extensive European tours and I think the last one we did was Costa Rica. We went via here I think there was no direct flight. So we had to come through South Africa. That was the first time I came in 2001, I think it was. Came 2001 and via here we went to do the gig and it was so nice. We came back, but I had a visa still in 2002 and after we came back to Nigeria. So I told him that I would like to go help a friend buy some, equipment because a friend wanted to buy equipment. She had money, but she didn't have a visa. And she said, please, can you help me go? I'll pay for your ticket and your hotel, So she did that. And that was, my start of my, South African thing. Music Connection was my first point of call.
So I was going to ask, how do you end up in South Africa?
Yeah. That's the story. So I came, in and I had a friend at the time he left from here to America, but his brother was still here, So I stayed with that brother of his. We call him Brasoni. Now, Brasoni was, he wasn't really into music a little bit, but he housed me in Honeydew. He housed me in Honeydew 2002, yes. housed me a few times. But now the last time I came, because I was going back and forth. Now, at that time I was recording my first album. So I had a demo tape, as it were, to bring by, to shop with. So I would bring it and I would look for people. Do you know? Somehow, Baseline came. From Baseline, I met a few guys. And then I ended up at Universal Music.
Because at that time, also the majors were only in South Africa.
Yes,
they went across the continent.
They were not. Even right now, they are not. But the publishing, I mean, that's what they're majorly doing, because everybody can record their music now. But they still depend on the publishing from those big companies.
Yeah.
Now, so when Universal now heard my stuff, they liked it because it was different. I was using an acoustic guitar. My first album was recorded on that. And actually, the first album was gospel songs that I reinterpreted, in a way. Gospel songs that were big in Nigeria, but I would then take and, make it smooth. And so they liked that sound because they said they didn't have it in South Africa. So Universal then signed me. The first deal was a licensing deal because it was recorded. So over my going back and forth, I came back and mastered it here. It was nice. I released it in Nigeria also. But, at the time, pirates were huge, so you had to kind of sell it to pirates.
Yeah.
The story. You had to sell the music to pirates for the music so that they don't pirate it. Because if they own
it's interesting because not everybody knows, because I have friends who are in the industry.
Right.
How actually the music industry in Nigeria was actually grown by the pirates.
That's definitely so.
Because they were doing it anyway. So artists then, like you were saying, artists then went, rather than just lose out, let me go to them.
Yes.
And they can buy it off me. At least I get something.
True that. Because every big artist at the time, including Lagbaja himself, he had that problem where he would release an album, print CDs from his pocket and market from his pocket. But the next day he gets to the streets, is the pirated copies. I mean, he can't find his copy. They are staying there in the shops waiting. So we then, I think people like Kenny Ogumbe, who was Kenny's music at the time, then, started bringing them to the table and saying, guys, let's not fight. How can we work together? So every artist then knew that, okay, if you wanted to release, just go to them. They pay you maybe, if you're big, probably 5 million at the time was big money. I mean, even the P-Squares and all those guys, they would get those monies and let the pirate sell whatever he wants to sell.
An African solution to an African problem.
Exactly. Crazy as it is, but it worked at the time, Yeah. So when I came here, that was it for me. I just decided, you know what? I love the space. I love the fact that South Africa is quite... Jazz wasn't big in Nigeria at the time, but not now. So... that was why I came here and the journey started, and it was a beautiful, challenging one. It was really, really interesting for me. I learned a whole lot and I'm still learning. I mean, every day I work with different artists, different orientation, but I'm not as happy as I was because people are now more about the commercial side of things and not the artistic side of things. And that is very sad. Hence, I'm saying the scenario is changed now. People are, globally, they don't care about how great you are as an artist. Is how many people do you have on your Instagram?
Because you're part of a particular era.
Right.
So I remember, I think the first time I met you, I end up in very random situations in my life. And I was MC at Joy of Jazz for what was labeled, I think it was the Guitar Summit. So it was you,
2010,
Jimmy,
I think it was. Yeah.
You, Jimmy Lulu, I think Louis Mhlanga, and I can't remember.
Celilo? Was Celilo there?
No, it wasn't Celilo.
Why is Celilo? Okay.
It was somebody else. It might have been him. But I remember emceeing this thing. And it was a particular time.
Right,
it's a snapshot of a particular time.
Right.
Where you're not necessarily as big in inverted commas as the Kwaito artists, etc.
Right.
But jazz had its
space, yes,
and it had a demand,
right.
Whereas now it's. I mean, when you're talking about it, it's not there. It doesn't feel like it's there anymore.
It's not there. It's not about feeling. It's not there anymore. I mean, we still gig, we still do stuff, but not like as big as those days where every festival you would have at least 5 instrumental jazz artists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These days, I don't know, it's African music, it's fusion, more fusion than jazz. You know what I mean? So it's definitely different these days. That was an era, like you say. It's definitely an era that.
Do you think?
Gone, yeah.
So a city like Johannesburg, and this is a conversation I've had over the years with friends. So I mean, I have a teenager, and the city more and more feels like it's geared to him and his generation.
Okay.
But there's no spaces, and Joburg has always had this problem. I think we've just grown into it and started to realize it, where there are no spaces for us socially to go out at night.
Yes.
Clubs are always going to be skewed towards the young.
Yes.
You still get on occasion these events that are catering to an older generation.
Right.
But I think also maybe from a let's call it a smaller scale. I mean, places like Baseline eventually shut down, Orbit shut down.
Yeah.
There was a time when, I could go to Kippies or there were smaller spaces. It didn't have to be a festival.
Yes.
To be able to go and experience your music, and sometimes better environment for me to engage with
really
the music.
Engage and enjoy the music, even better than the bigger stages. Yeah.
You are listening to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast, a podcast in which I chat to Africans from a cross-section of society and sectors, including art, culture, design, business, and creativity, to name a few. I delve into their journeys, the decisions they've taken to get to where they are, how they do what they do, and everything in between. Essentially, we go wherever the conversation takes us. So it also feels like it's to do with it's the evolution of a city that's tied to evolution of the world. So you're like, because everybody's skewed towards, like you're saying, the commercial, the social media, all of these things.
Right.
There's not even a space for. There's an audience for everything. I believe this, right?
Definitely so.
And it's about finding your little.
True.
It won't be big.
True.
It may have been big, but it won't be big. But finding your people.
Right.
And this shift feels like it's even done away with spaces where you could find your people.
So true. so true. It's a question I've been asking. I've got, of course, WhatsApp, got so many groups and all that. I've got friends in London who, around my age, I'm 48 to about 58. And I ask them that question of, where do you find, how do you find music that you enjoy? Because a lot of them, yes, they go on social media, but they're tired. They don't have that time to be sitting on Instagram or whatever for so long. So, they want to do that and go back to whatever it is they're doing. So, and I ask them, how do you find music? Because I'm also curious to know that, okay, people of our age, how can I connect with you? Where do you guys go? And honestly, I didn't get any answer, honestly speaking, because I still want to do music that we enjoy doing. Of course, infuse, sounds that you can relate to now into that. But my concern is I put it on Spotify. Do you go there? Do you know what I mean? Do we go there as older people? How then can we connect? It's a question that I really love an answer to, or it's an engagement that I would love for us to have that can then open all of our eyes to say, okay, actually, we have this platform, or maybe somebody out there might be able to say, okay, if these guys are saying they're curious, then let me create this platform for them so that musically we can meet somewhere and we can meet people that we, that may be new guys, young or old, who do what we love. But how do we find it? Because immediately you open all the social media, so many things bombard your attention.
I mean, look, it's with everything, there's so much noise.
Yo, bro.
And I mean, the fact that even with music, with streaming platforms, you can find close to everything. So sometimes too much choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to walk in and there's a selection of 2 types of water. And there's
it's easier,
2 margarines, and there's 5 t-shirts, and you're not sitting there with 15 things and now debating what it is.
Exactly.
I mean, you haven't asked me, but I'm gonna answer. So interestingly for me, I use Spotify as well as like Apple Music to a certain extent. I've been on both for a long time.
Right.
I've been on Spotify the longest.
Yeah.
So, and because I listen to such a wide range of music, the algorithm has kind of figured out my taste to a certain extent. And when I say, I'll go from, if I look over the last 7 days, I have probably listened to old school hip hop and new hip hop artists, dub reggae, classic rock and heavy metal. And today today is like a cross section between, I was listening to your music and then a cross section of kind of more soulful, jazzy hip hop.
Right.
Although contemporary.
Right.
Because I was listening to Little Sims from the UK with roots in with Nigerian heritage.
Right.
And so because of that, like what the algorithm suggests will be broad. And every now and then I'll hear a song and I'll be like, oh, I wonder who that is. And I'll check out the artist. Oh, so I was listening to Terrace Martin. I don't know if you've listened to Terrace Martin. So him, Robert Glasper, Kamasi Washington have they had a project called R plus R equals now. So they're jazz, but call it the new version. It incorporates everything, like the different influences.
Nice.
So he has an EP that's out. So I was listening to that yesterday, and that led me to other artists and other music.
Right.
But it's an important question.
Yes.
Which there is no clear answer.
Right.
And when you're saying it, I was just thinking, so I found that with my son, because my son makes music, there's a collective of them I discovered, because he used to play me some of the stuff.
Nice.
They use SoundCloud.
Oh, SoundCloud.
So you had all these kids who are they're not signed, they're not mainstream artists, they make beats, they put out EPs, they do all of this stuff.
Yeah.
His music is on Spotify.
Okay.
But because I pay for some service that allows him to put it on the streaming platforms.
Right.
But I found that on SoundCloud, they kind of know each other and they're sharing music. And because, I know this kid and he's like, oh, my friend has released something and it's relevant for them, the lyrics, the music, it's contextual for them.
Right.
So I guess it's trying to find that a place where we can connect, so I can hear something and I can go, hey, I was just listening to Kunle's latest thing. Have you heard it?
Right.
And being able to share that down the line.
Right. It would be nice if we could have that forum. SoundCloud is a free service for young and upcoming artists, but I don't know if we can use that space, but we need something like that where even if it's on Spotify, where once you've listened to a style or some artist, you are able to then say, hey guys, now where are those guys that, are similar around your age group and because it's too diverse in terms of age, race, and just to be
it's also we're talking about it, and it's also particularly within the music industry, right? So there's the whole narrative about, artists getting screwed because they don't understand the business side.
Right.
And the importance of understanding the business side.
Right.
But it's also, we've now created a world where everybody is supposedly a brand.
Right.
And as an individual, you need to figure out everything, right? So you need to figure out how to market, how to promo, the admin, the finances, and create.
Sure. I wish I started now. Yeah. It would have been, I would be used to it. But I started in an era where everything was sorted out for you. You didn't have to worry, just create. That was our work as artists. But now you have to do all of that.
And the important thing was understand enough to not get screwed, right?
Exactly.
So understand that you need to get advice on a contract and who's giving you advice and, all of that. But like, so now it just feels, it feels like you must do everything.
We are re-educating ourselves. I'm working with a guy by the name David. He's a Nigerian keyboard player. Fantastic guy. He's learning so much about the industry. And he promised that he was going to be showing me, because I feel like I don't have the time, and I do have the time, but I'm lazy. You know what I mean? I don't know what the issue is. I'm lazy to sit down and learn. But when he's learned it, he just sits with me, hey, bros, this is the industry. This is what you need to know. Oh, really? I need to know that. Then I get those information. So now I don't have to sift through all of that and see what I need. He sifts through for me, and he comes and says, okay, this is the new thing. This is how you can market yourself. And some of those things I don't like, man.
But I will make an excuse for you. So yes, laziness. I'm a big believer in also being able to chill and like not having to do stuff. But it's also, you may be capable of doing everything if you put the attention on it.
On it, yes.
But should you have to do everything? So this is my personal. So I mean, I've been doing this podcast for, I think I did the first episode in July, August 2021, which is when I had a book come out. And so how this podcast actually happened was, for years I'd been wanting to do a podcast. I was fascinated by the medium from when I was still in magazine.
Right.
So this, before I even did radio, I was still in magazine, but I was fascinated by this idea of, me being able to have conversations, me being able to do it myself. And I talked to different people about equipment, because especially then, it's like it was burdensome, right? And then I procrastinated for years. And then when my book was coming out, my publisher, the PR people said, listen, to build awareness around the book, why don't you do maybe 3 to 5 episodes of a podcast? So this was promo of a podcast where you either talk about what you've written about, or you talk to other people, but tied to what you've written about. And so I said, I've been wanting to do, I had about 3-4 documents on the direction I'll take.
Yeah.
And I said, I've been wanting to do a podcast. So actually, let me do this. Let me, kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah.
I will do the podcast to promote the book.
Right.
But I will make it the podcast I've always wanted to do, which is why it's called Listen to Your Footsteps, because my book is titled Listen to Your Footsteps. My journey with it over the last 2.5 years, there's been a lot of stops and starts because I was doing everything myself. And then I'm realizing the reason why I record in a studio now, because they say it's easy. You create yourself your home studio. I bought the mic. I had the stuff in my house. Then I moved from a bigger house to a smaller house coming out of COVID, because everybody was downsizing. Now, all of a sudden, my desk is 2 meters away from the kitchen. Now I'm interviewing somebody on Zoom, and I have to ask for the washing machine to be put off. Or please don't run any water. Or don't walk through this side of the house. Or the dogs, the neighbors' dogs are barking outside.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting the sound right. If that's all I was doing, I would have learned. But every week it felt like I was starting afresh.
Because new challenges now.
In terms of just I couldn't remember where I'd put the settings. I couldn't remember which buttons I was supposed to press.
You were the engineer, you were the podcaster, you were the everything.
And I've been doing that since.
Wow.
And now you met Ayob, so I have him helping me now, because I realized I may be capable. I may have the capacity, but I actually can't do everything.
I hear you.
And so even if we're looking, that's why I say it's my struggle, because now you are expected to do everything. It's not humanly possible.
Yeah.
You have a limited amount of time,
yes,
and energy every day.
Every day, true.
And when you take a portion of that energy and devote it to something, you are prioritizing that, and you're taking, whether you're doing it intentionally or unintentionally, but you're prioritizing and taking energy away from something else.
True.
So right now, for me personally, it feels like the work is really figuring out where I'm going to devote that energy. I need to devote it to stuff.
Right.
Like I need to think about promo. You need to think about how you're going to build awareness around your music, how you're going to market your music.
Yes.
You need to think about it. You can't ignore it.
No, you can't.
There was a time when maybe you could just go, I go into the studio, I make music.
Yeah.
There's other people who must worry about all these other bits and pieces. Now you don't have that liberty.
True.
You have to have an understanding of each one.
Right.
But it's about the level of energy that you put into it.
True. I think one of the ways I'm finding the solution to what you're saying is you still have to find PR people that you work with. You still have to find an assistant of sort who's going to help. I mean, like you're talking about Ayob, he called me, sent me the address, and you didn't have to do that. You were worrying about. So you need somebody or people like that who will be able to make your work easier. So you then choose which one of the tasks that you do.
Yeah.
And then they help you do the others that you don't have to do. You know what I mean? That is still very, very important. I'm not a social media person, but I have to be there for, the kind of, the level that I want to get to with my career. There's no ways, so there's no reason why I can't find somebody who is going to be, whilst we're doing this, is taking pictures and is posting, I'm at this place, There's no reason why I can't do that. And sometimes we think, I don't have the money to pay them, but you have something to pay them with. Yeah. There's always an exchange of sort that can take place. And that's one thing I've learned. And that is the next thing I want to do,
So I am curious. I mean, before we started, you mentioned it and you did touch on it a bit now.
Yeah.
You've been in South Africa for a very long time now.
Yeah.
But your reputation and your work, it speaks for itself, but it speaks for itself on a global, perspective.
Yes, sir.
You have traveled, you have toured, you have relationships around the world. You're not absolutely rooted where this is the only option that you have.
Yeah.
It may sound a bit blunt, but why are you still here? If we've talked about, we've talked about the struggles, right?
Right.
We've talked about the challenges.
Right.
There are other spaces where, yes, the challenges are still there.
Yes.
But on the surface, take a random country like Switzerland, where, you have Montreux, you have there's performances and there's artists performing from jazz to fusion to all the time.
Right.
And, Europe, you can gig quite regularly across multiple countries.
True.
Whereas the difficulty of South Africa has always also been distance, which is why we've always struggled to have mainstream artists come here because there's no African touring circuit.
Right.
So you can't kind of hop from country to country.
Right.
And if you're coming to perform...
Not easily, yeah.
Yeah, not easily. If you're coming to perform in South Africa, it's literally, you're flying, it's the 1-2 days to get here.
Yeah.
And you can be here for a week and only do 3 performances.
Right. And then go back. Well, we're looking at that. I don't believe in living in any Western country. I believe in Africa a lot, and I think I'm contemplating, living in both countries at the same time. If I could, go back to Nigeria, do stuff there, come back here, do stuff here, and that then opened doors for me globally because I realized that either you like it or not, they call our people drug dealers, they call our people whatever. However, we are, we have 4 nominations on the Grammys, and even though we didn't win this year, but the name Nigeria, when it comes to music, speaks volume globally. I mean, does that the fellas and the likes have opened for us. So I think that I shouldn't be, afraid of where I come from. I have never been, but I'm saying, going back and forth and trying to take things from there globally and come here and, relationships I've made here, what is the word I'm looking for? You still use them, use those relationships and see what we could do. People that I've worked with here, if they're still keen, we can work together, do stuff, globally. And so what you just mentioned is something I'm thinking along the lines of to say, what am I still doing here? This is home for me. However, doesn't then mean that I'm not going to, open my flaps and fly.
Yeah.
I would do that now going forward. I will go, stay a little bit, come back, stay, I would do a lot of back and forths, and it can't be an excuse.
Yeah.
I wish I had done this earlier, but I'm glad it's happening now. I think this is the right time, and the music I'm hearing in my head, it really just needs me to stay more that side and come back and, and yeah, so that I'm able to then represent, the sound that I'm hearing properly, authentically, not just trying to, for example, using a talking drum, trying to make it work. No, use the real thing, and there's so many great musicians in Nigeria too that are doing well. I mean, some of my boys, on the jazz circuit in Europe, they're touring, so why can't I go do it? I remember, without meaning to give away too much, I remember my meeting with the French Cultural Center. I went to them and I introduced myself. I'm an artist, And they told me, we can't work with you directly because you're not South African. Our mandate, is to work with South Africans. So that was a while ago. I didn't take cognizance of it. But now that we're talking about it, I've been thinking about it in the last 6 months. And it just makes sense to me to then say that, why don't I go create that relationship back at home? Waka Agency, Rosie once called me for CNN. There was something they wanted to do. I can't remember. The African Voice is what I think it is called. Yeah. They wanted to interview me, but they wanted me to come to Nigeria. They wanted to do it from Nigeria because I'm not from here. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. They wanted to come to my studio in Nigeria and, show who I am at grassroots and I don't have a base there. So, that was probably 5-6 years ago. I can't remember. Those opportunities, they kind of left. But if I then retrace my step and establish those things, they can still come back, So I really think that I'm going to be working more that side and then coming back to, reconcretize relationships and, re-strategize. And also, looking at opportunities of bringing artists, discovering artists from that side, bringing them to the small circuit. There's a small circuit here, actually. Lesotho, Swaziland, and South Africa, Zimbabwe. There are a few promoters there that do jazz concerts. Yes, they do jazz concerts, but are they able to really pay those big artists? Not really, but they can try.
Yeah,
I know the guy in Zimbabwe, if the artist is already here, might be able to pay them, I don't know, whatever fees they would then charge to just go from here to Zimbabwe, do the gig and come back, than bringing him all the way from America. So there's a small circuit that I'm also trying to see, okay, can we then leverage on? Yeah, that's what I was looking for, leverage on those relationships where we're able to bring in maybe not so big artists, but great, artists that maybe I'll discover in Lagos. And I'll say, hey, come, let's go. And I'll bring them here, take them to Lesotho, take them to Swaziland and represent them.
And you have you've built the trust, you've built the relationship.
Yes.
So as if you are saying this is something that makes sense.
Yes.
I will listen. Well, I'll listen or I'll take that as opposed to if that person came say,
directly.
This is who I am, this is what I'm trying to do.
Exactly. So when I called my friend in Lesotho and say, hey, bro, there's this great artist. You need to listen to them. They're great. Let me send you stuff. Even if they don't hear what I'm hearing, because I said it, they would, hey, Kunle, I trust you. Okay, bring them. You know what I mean? So I think that might be able to help. It's something that I could also leverage on and small money here and there, but also helping young artists, to, those opportunities that we've created,
Particularly within that, like you're saying, there is a circuit.
Oh, definitely. Small circuit,
and particularly within that jazz, that space.
Yes.
I've had Bokane Daya, for example, on the podcast.
Right.
There are still, Duduzi Makatini.
Yes.
He's doing well.
Yes.
There are a lot more of them.
A lot.
Here and across the continent. So even, here, Nigeria, and other spaces. And sometimes what they need is literally what you got from Ibrahim, what you got from Oliver Mdugutsi, what you got from that era that you're a part of, being able to then kind of let them benefit from that and give them a bit of a runway as well.
Right. Exactly what we would like to do. Give them that runway. Yeah.
You talk about the music in your head. How do you make music? What's your process? What's your process?
There's no cast on stone kind of process. It comes to you different times, different things. Sometimes it's a groove, sometimes it's just a groove. You hear rhythm Sometimes it's an experiment of saying, what if I, play an high life beat, and then I play a bebop jazz chords on there, some major nines and some, just see how that works. Put that in there. And then what if I take a South African melody? How will it sound? You know what I mean? So sometimes it's that experiment that you just say, what if I try this? And sometimes you record it, not so great. Sometimes, wow, this is nice. And then you build on there, So, sometimes it's a whole melody that comes that you then work everything around it. You don't want to overly produce it. You just allow what you're hearing to just flow. That melody, you flow with it. You don't try to force anything on there. Create the beat based on what you're hearing, or the groove based on, what the melody is kind of telling you to do, and sometimes you get a great song from there. And that has been my work process. Sometimes I'm working on a song and there's a noise from outside, but it's an idea that I pick up from there, and I change everything. And that's one of the reasons why I've always wanted to have a studio, because I enjoy creating music, especially stuff that I don't like doing the norm. Like if it's an amapiano, it must be amapiano. No, I want to fuse an amapiano with an Afrobeat and add some tradition. I like to fuse things and just see what comes out, because I think what I would like to be known for when I'm there, when you say he's what do you call it? They say he's but I used to laugh at them when you say maestro, or no, there's a name. Not superstar. There's a name, they say, oh, legend. Yes. Legend. So for me to be called a legend is I created a style. Then you can call me a legend. After that, oh, like Fela, he created Afrobeat, and that for me is legendary. And until then, I'm just a normal normal artist.
It's interesting to me that you can see what I see is like the love for music.
Right.
So I've talked to musicians before, and one of the questions or one of the statements will be, I'm going to do this till, I'm going to do this till X time, right? Or I'm going to do this for this amount of period. I don't feel the need to ask you that, because the sense I get is that you're going to be doing this
till I'm gone.
till you cannot.
Exactly.
For whatever reason.
Right.
And that's separate from, I'm a professional musician, I need to make a living. I don't know if the sense I'm getting is accurate. It's like, yes, this is what you do as a profession.
Right.
But it really feels like even if you weren't doing it as a profession, you would still be creating music.
Definitely.
Regularly.
Definitely. Music is not a cash cow for me. I'm not doing it for the money. COVID has taught us to have businesses, and I'll always have businesses. I would always buy and sell things, whatever it is. You know what I mean? I would always have money because I would do business. But this is my passion. This is, I wish I'd learned how to do business way back. I'd wanted to, since I got here, but I didn't know how to. Now I know. Now I know how to do business.
So sometimes you need to go through that. You need to go through that journey to get to here.
Exactly.
Like if it started then,
yes,
reality would probably been very different.
Definitely
and
so.
You'd be talking about, I wish I had done
that first. True that. So making money for me is a different thing. It's on the side, but making music is my passion and my love. And until I'm able to create that style that you can point to and say, hey, I spoke to Kunle a couple of years ago about this, and look at what he's doing globally. Then I would be like, yeah. So, but I mean, on the side for bread and butter, I would have things that I would do that would give me money. It could be music, it could be performing, but more importantly, creating, the aspect of creating or, making music in the context of finding styles is my passion. Performing is just something I do effortlessly. I make money, I don't make money, it doesn't matter. But I would do things that would bring me money.
On that note, thank you very much, my brother.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
That was dope. The Listen to Your Footsteps podcast is produced by Zebra Culture. If you have ideas of what we can do better, people you'd like us to have a conversation with, or would just like to share a thought, you can email me on info@zebraculture.com. To check out past episodes, go to kojobuffer.com/podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share with a friend. If you'd like to get a copy of the book, Listen to Your Footsteps, check out kojobuffer.com/book. There are details on the various spaces it's available at. I'd also appreciate it if you could leave a review or comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, there's the Zebra Culture by Kojo Buffer newsletter, where on a weekly basis, I share a curated list of articles, playlists, videos, etc. that have caught my attention. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.